And here we go with a follow-up video of the Coast R135 BADWATER edition status post ultramarathon, 30 miles on Saturday. It is Wednesday now. So how did the R135 perform? Well, bottom line up front, they did fantastic. So let's go through everything that I remember from the get-go. So I purchased these just kind of on a whim. I saw that they came out. I already have the R1, but I see that the R135 was available and that it was a little bit lighter, a little bit different. Obviously for the, BADWATER 135, race down in, I want to say California, correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, and so I figured, hey, Mount Coast makes awesome products. Let me go ahead and check this out too, and was not disappointed at all, especially with my first impressions. It was fantastic. And then, a couple of other runs coming into the Ultra with the 135, same thing, boom, just over and over, repetitive, just, yeah, this is the shoe. Made a decision pretty early on that this would be the shoe that I was gonna run the race in, even though leading up to that, it was gonna be the R1, okay? And so, the race, we started early. It was 6 a.m. And then pretty much it was 3 mile loops times 10, all on pavement, hardball, with undulating up and down, inclines and stuff like that. But there were some flat sections too. It had been raining quite a bit, and so there were some low-lying areas with a lot of puddles and everything, and also bad weather was in the forecast, which did happen. So pretty much loop 1 was fine. It was nice and dry, but by loop 2, like, the heavens just opened up and it was just completely like a deluge, right? It wasn't just a little sprinkle, it was a deluge that came down. And sure enough, we all got wet, but what are you gonna do? It is what it is. And so the shoes obviously got wet too. I was wearing just my standard, like non-cotton, I guess polyester-based socks. I don't actually know what all the material of my socks were. If I can find that, I'll put that on the screen now. But, there was a lot of sloshing and slishing and sloshing and whatnot reported back from my foot within the shoe. But as far as like, a lot of movement and untoward motion that, historically for me has led to like blisters and other things, that really was well contained inside the R135 here. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. Obviously the up and down, I mean, you can't dispute what it was. But what I will say is that there is, quite a bit of ventilation going on, obviously, top and sides of the shoe, but you have these little ports here that I feel that levitated above a lot of the water that had collected within the shoe, to the point that even though it remained humid, and it did sprinkle a little bit more throughout the course, overall it did, in my opinion, dry relatively fast. Now this is a pretty light shoe, men's size 9, I believe they're like 7-ish ounces, and so the shoe never officially felt heavy. I felt that the upper material here did a good job in drying as quickly as possible, conditions allowing, right? I've run in other shoes that even on a dry day, just my sweat would all collect within the shoe, within the material, and the dang thing just felt like a brick. That was not the case, not so here with the R135. As far as lockdown and how did the shoe feel overall, were there any changes? Yes. So I pretty much was running on the right side of the path. At majority of the time, I would try to consider, being in the middle or something different, in order just to kind of try to balance things out. But overall, it was, mainly kind of coming down on that right side. And what I found is, I did have a little bit of loosening going on of the right side here, but that was quickly corrected, by getting off, putting my foot up, and then, doing like the little tune fit here. And then I was back. And then I did that twice. Here, and then eventually redid the laces. Mainly that was later on, and I probably would have done that anyway, just to kind of, reset kind of what was going on. By that point, my legs were starting to fatigue and stuff like that. So that wasn't like a a shoe failing to lock down and needing to be released. It was a me, being later in the race, needing that reset. So good job, in maintaining the lockdown for sure. But it was very appropriate, right, as far as the top goes, with its ability to lay down across the top of the foot, and I felt that the pressure distribution was nice in that it wasn't super duper tight here or loose here or vice versa. It was very comfortable up top and very appropriate and very comfortable and, right for the conditions as far as the upper goes here. That it wasn't too tight, but it also wasn't allowing me to slide back and forth. So that was super cool. And also the toe box, I have 0 blisters, like 0, 0, 0. I do have a little bit of bruising going on to my right third toe on the right side. But again, there was, a little bit extra motion here. And historically, it's been 4 toenails and above, as well as blisters and something, right? So that's a considerable diminish from baseline for me, having worn these shoes. So I will credit the shoes for that for sure. I mean, there's a bunch of other variables too, but the shoes play, in my opinion, a huge role in protecting the foot or the opposite. Okay. And so as far as, the, light cell, the midsole here, I felt that it remained very bouncy and very can-do and very duty-bound throughout the run. And so for me, right, I ended up doing a lot of rear foot landing with the intention of just kind of letting the shoe and momentum do the work, right? For these big, long distances, I'm trying to conserve energy. I'm not really trying to, be up on my toes or any of that stuff. And really letting the momentum carry me, but also, changing, going from here, very subtle stuff, right, to here, to here a little bit, and then really just trying to vary where my foot is landing so that I'm trying to, incorporate different muscles and things like that so that hopefully I could prevent cramps, which eventually did happen for me, but that's a me thing, not a shoe thing. But as far as when I was landing on the heel, I do feel that there was a very nice reception of the impact and then eventual toe off via a external rocker here, and that was very nice. It wasn't a significant amount of energy and pop and all that stuff, but I do feel that the times I was running for the effort that I wasn't putting in, that was really just the shoe doing the work, was very nice. I basically when things were rolling along nicely, I was looking at 9.5 to 10 minutes a mile. And that was just, cruising with very little impact from my end. And eventually all that changed based on course and me and things like that. But there was a point in time when things were just cruising right along. And that was super cool. That was super duper cool. You could definitely tell that it's a lightweight shoe. That is a very energetic and ready to perform for long periods of time. This shoe definitely can and will outdo me probably every time. It's going to take a while before this shoe ever gets behind me. It's going to be ahead the whole time. And then of course you got your zero sag. This stuff here, I definitely felt that later on in the race. I was like, okay, how am I doing? How am I feeling as far as my feet go, my legs go? The cramps, to me, that's a separate thing. Yes, I had cramps, but I feel acid-based balance and electrolytes and kind of into that nutritional realm, that's its own thing. But as far as the foot structure, the foot mechanics and muscles and things like that, that potentially could receive a ton of deformation given improper support or lack of support. That was not the case. I feel the zero sag here definitely was where it needed to be and remained so throughout the run. Here under the big toe and then kind of along the metatarsal heads here. And then of course over here towards the base of the 5th metatarsal. Continued just to be there. And it's not something that you need to be at a certain point, landing or within the shoe or whatnot. It's just there. It's there. No matter what you're doing, it will remain. And that was super cool. And the drop on the shoe was fairly considerate. So, you know, whether you're here or whatnot, you're going to be receiving some amount of forgiveness as far as the base of the shoe goes. The midsole here, that light cell, it remained nice. Now, I believe this is a closed cell foam, and it never, to me, received any water. I don't feel like it got heavier. You know, if it was, you know, to weigh anything more, it was because like early on had a bunch of water in it, and that eventually went away. But I don't think that the foam itself ever absorbed any of that stuff. All right, moving on to the outsole. How's the breakdown look after going in? I think I had like 10, maybe 15 miles on the shoe, and then of course the 30. You know, you could definitely tell that there was a lot of heel, you know, striking, boom. And that's me like shuffling along. I remember there being quite a bit of shuffling going on. And so obviously that's going to happen. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what the material is, unless it's like, you know, concrete or diamond. That's going to happen. But as far as like the rest of the outsole goes, not a drop of breakdown. All right, boom, same on the right shoe there. You know, who has more? This is it's kind of equal on both sides there. So yeah, anyways, we got the Go Flow, that geometry, and I already spoke to that just as far as like its ability to roll through. You know, you got some exposed midsole, it's got some wrinkling going on, but I feel like, you know, if it didn't have some, you know, some wrinkling, I'd be concerned actually. So an appropriate amount of wrinkling going on, and obviously some, you know, coarse dirt and mud there and everything. But that's it. Okay, I feel like the R135 performs like spectacular. Okay, I do have a link for this shoe in the description. I know that they were selling like hotcakes last time I looked. Like most of the like sizes were out, and I don't know if they're going to restock. This is a limited edition shoe, but if they do, I would encourage you to check it out, because in my opinion, this is probably, you know, gonna be one of the leading shoes for 2025, in my opinion. I mean, not because it, you know, carried me through the ultra, but, you know, just in terms of like shoes, I feel like that Mount Coast is on something for sure. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll catch you in the next one.